this is an interesting discussion, and thank you. I'm taking my time and learning, but I won't be supporting it either. I indicated in our workshop that I expected to see the rate increase pulled significantly back, and while management's done it to a degree, I think that there's more to be done, and I think we have a responsibility here around the table to be doing our very best before it goes out for public consultation. So I too support the process where we get the overheads up and on the screen and work through it, and I think it would be hugely helpful. I also hear a lot about the less fortunate ratepayers and the difficulty, and when you break it down to 20 cents a week, it's insignificant, but I'd like more information on what the rate increase means for rural farming properties as well. I just don't think we've got enough facts on the table here, so I won't be supporting this in this state.
Finn? Yeah, just one of the problems with Maori that have approached me about funding is that usually too late, and they come, you'll be aware of a delegation that came last week looking for some funding for the year 2017 and the year 2016, but they don't realise the process, so they come back to me and say, well, how do we get an equitable, is that the word, share of the pūtea when you look at all the projects that are being funded? How many of them are actually Māori projects?
Mr. Chair, nobody likes a rate increase, particularly when it's up there over the 5 and around the 6. I noticed that the Greater Wellington Regional Council are at the moment considering a 6.1% increase. I personally, like others around the table, would like to see a lot less. However, we're here to make the tough decisions. We're here to look at our environment, enhance that and protect it. We're here about increasing the economic viability of this particular area. We have to make those decisions, and I think some of those decisions are the tough ones, and they demand that money is actually put into them. It's that delicate balance, I think, between what the community can afford and what we actually need to do here. And I think, although I'd like to see a lot of an improvement on this particular figure, I think this is part of a process. We'll get, no doubt, a lot of submissions to the annual plan, and I think the tough part will be when we get those requests from very worthy community groups who are requesting money for their particular project. I think that's when the rubber's going to hit the road on this one for our council here, and particularly the new councillors, I think will find that most probably very difficult, having been through it before in around other tables, council tables. So I'm not comfortable with that increase, but as part of the process and a way forward, I think that's the way we go.
First to speak, Councillor Dick, and then I'll ask Councillor Scott to sum up.
Mr. Chairman, this notion of a spreadsheet with running totals that you can play around with as you debate has some merit, but I think it really relates to when you are dealing with items that are discretionary. And I'd support that happening at the appropriate stage, which is not now. But I just reflect that there's two ways that you possibly can approach this sort of thing in terms of dealing with the cost of existing services. Now, when I first started across the road there, a very long time ago, the detailed budgets for 52 business units were all printed out and probably had up to 50 line items in each business unit, and we went through all of those, and the end result may have been that we cut the postage for water supply and twiddled with the advertising on something else. Quite honestly, it was a futile and ridiculous exercise. The far more sensible way of going about it is that you actually employ good staff who you trust and you task them with doing their best to provide the best service at minimum cost. And I believe that is what we've got here. We've got good staff who do their best in that regard, and quite honestly, there's got to be an element of trust there.
Sum up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There are a couple of points that made that I think do need to be addressing. And one is the desire to stay within the CPI. I think it's very worthy, but I need to point out that there is a lack of corporate memory here. And perhaps it would be a good idea if we always stayed within the CPI and put up rates unnecessarily at the times when times were good, because this council has gone through some years of nil rates increases. And perhaps we should have been squirreling away for the rainy day and putting up the rates at that time, because the argument works both ways. In fact, there actually has been in the past one occasion when this council gave back money to its ratepayers. I think that was probably quite foolish, but some councils used it wisely and some actually returned it all to the individual. We have tended in the past to rate as it was necessary to rate to meet the levels of service. So have we done sufficient cost cutting? Last year, as you will, last term, yes, it was last year, there was a huge slash and burn, and a lot of overheads came out of that. I'm not sure how much further we can go as to cutting overheads. We don't really want to put up a tent on the street and put the staff in that while we let their offices. I think it's unfair to suggest there is lots of extra meat in there that can just be taken out easily. The next step is actually cutting costs of services, and that's what some councils are coming to. Let's cut a service. So probably if we do start looking, it'll be some of the projects that councils most support that actually might have to go. So we do need to be careful of that. Can it be done easily with overheads, that if we do this and it just is one formula? No, it's not one formula, because actually there's quite a balance there as to how much of it is a particular targeted rate, how much is that as a general rate, how much is public good, how much is a loan, how much is... So different things have totally different impacts on the rate. So I'd hate to think how complicated our spreadsheet would be in order to have an instant answer to that, because it's not a case of X amount of money here means X amount on that there, because we have a somewhat more complicated cost structure in the way that we rate and underpin the expenditure on this. I think that it's quite clear from everybody that they would like to keep this rate as low as possible, and I think that's got to be the forefront of all of our minds, that we do what is fair to the community and we consider the most vulnerable people in the community and see that our impact is not going to harm them.
Thank you. I'll put that motion in. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. 3, 1, 2. Which way did you go? You were aye. Yeah, you did second it. That's right. So that's carried. Thank you. Okay. With your indulgence, Council, I'd like us to perhaps go to the Maori Committee Chairman's report, just a matter of time, if nothing else, and let's see if we could get through this, and then we'll break for morning tea and then come back to the other item, which will take a bit longer, I suspect, the reorganisation discussion. Mr. Mohi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The main item yesterday was the talk of amalgamation, and the paper that I understand the committee had last week about amalgamation. The Maori Committee endorsed the council's submission that's being prepared for lodging by the regional council. There were two senior members of the committee that were at a treaty in Wellington yesterday, but I spoke to them both last night, and they endorsed what the rest of the committee said. last year, when the amalgamation was brought up, Councillor Curtin jokingly said to me that I was just looking after my own neck when I voiced concerns about amalgamation. But the reality is that 5 of us on the committee are 70 or over, so we're certainly not looking forward to investing in the pleasure of your company for too much longer. So endorsing that submission from the council, there was widespread support, and this is my 13th year in this on the Maori committee, and it was actually quite flattering, I think, for the council to have widespread support from Maori members in terms of the council's stance for environment issues, and also for the way that council have and continue to have Maori on the various standing committees. And in my day job, I deal with most regional councils throughout New Zealand, and Ngāi Tahu are in a slightly different position with commissioners there, but apart from Ngāi Tahu, Canterbury, we would be right up there in terms of Māori involvement across the board. That's not mean to say that the council and Māori agree wholeheartedly on things. It's just giving an understanding of that the Māori are very concerned about ecological matters that are raised in the submission, council submission, and are concerned that if the unitary organisation took over, how the environmental matters would be handled, and also concerned about the voice of Māori going forward under a new regime. The other thing is that at the end of the meeting we agreed to a draft submission of our own, which they asked me to present, not to you but to the board. We agreed on the draft submission after the meeting. That's been circulated for further comment, and I'll be signing that off on Friday. It was also suggested at a later meeting yesterday afternoon that the various tai whenua put in their own submission. So that's completely independent of whatever happened yesterday, or the various tai whenua chairs. On a positive note, if I may say, it did come up yesterday about some, I was going to say effluent flowing into the Waipawa River. And while, as you will be aware, that Māori are very concerned about rivers, etc., and heated concerns were expressed by Councillor Barker, but Māori sort of took it from the point of view that while there may be cows grazing and tuki and something like this, we didn't feel that it should be taken out of context. While we have concerns, we're certainly not coming around and want to shoot all the regional council managers for something that's actually beyond their control. And we see it as a blip. And if I use a Māori word, so because I won't swear, you know, tickle happens every day if you're healthy. On a positive zone, Member Brian Gregory spoke on Zone M in our visit last week, and how happy tangata whenua are to be involved in a pilot program down there. And there was a sort of general feeling that, as with the Ruataniwha Dam, that go right back for some 4 or 5 years, that we were involved in the process. And I think that is another tick for the way the council happened. Another project a subject came up yesterday, and we had general business, and I think it's called items. Now it's called something different. Items not on the agenda, minor items. And as the chair, and this always happens, the 4 or 5 minor items were debated at the same time. So it's quite difficult to chair when you have somebody talking about Ngaruroro and somebody talking about the Pakowhai rubbish under the bridge, and that the cows are down at the other end. So it's a sort of a juggling act, but very well enjoyed, I think, for everybody around the table, seeing the chair go into a bit of a flap. Just in terms of something that has been brought up very briefly yesterday, spoken about Matatini, the celebration of the Maori New Year. But in the year 2017, there will be between 25 and 30,000 Maori congregating on Hastings and Napier. And the concern was, are the maraes capable of hosting these in terms of water, drinking water and washing water? So that was actually just, and I alerted the committee before about the subject. It's of great concern, the fact that they're going to be hosting these people. And when you look at the tourism numbers, this certainly dwarfs that, given that the year 2016, in February, they'll be hosting all the secondary schools from throughout New Zealand for the same, but a shorter period. The 2017 one, the Māori will be here for a full week, so all the fish and chip shops will be going flat out. Yeah, that was about it, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And just to... no, there will be questions, but can I kick off? Couple of points. One, just for members of the public, there's been which does happen from time to time, the challenge is the Maori committee is the day before council, and normally we have a verbal update and then they endorse their minutes and continue. But today we actually have been given a recommendation from the meeting yesterday, and I'll read it out so it's clear to members of the public and press. Submission to the Local Government Commission the draft proposal for Hawke's Bay Local Government reorganisation, and the committee has decided to, and they want us to accept this, endorse the submission being prepared by HBRC for lodging with the Local Government Commission, which is very simple, but it is quite significant that you have actually brought a recommendation to us, so we'll deal with that in due course. Can I make one other comment before I throw it open to questions? The discoloration in the Waipawa River, I have, there will be a press release out today from Central Hawke's Bay. There was a field tile put in upstream of there which ran discoloured, as they do, as the clay clears, and will now be clean. So that's why our staff and Central Hawke's Bay staff could find absolutely no confirmation of faecal contaminant or E. coli in the testing that was done. That's fairly hot off the press, and it will be a press release today, I understand. Councillor Graham.
Thank you. Oh, well, that's really good news. Mr. Mohi, I understood that you said you had prepared a draft submission from the Maori Committee and circulated it to the committee members.
Sorry, to the Māori members, because it's the Māori members that will be signing the submission off, and I would like their permission to circulate it to the council members of the committee. It's in draft form.
So the poor old Pākehās on the committee will eventually get it?
Eventually it'll get through to you, chaps.
Okay, thank you.
The other thing is just in terms of, in no disrespect, Councillor Belford, I got several phone calls last year about cattle grazing in the Peka Peka swamp, and most days I shoot past there, and then I did observe some cows, so waded through the swamp up to the waist and found that they were standing on the edge with a 7-wire fence between them and the swamp, but you couldn't see the fence from that part of the road. So it was very much pleasure reporting back to that concerned Māori.
Okay, questions to Mr. Mohi? Okay, well I'm happy to move this recommendation. And you happy to second that, Councillor Scott? Anyone wish to speak to it?
Mr. Chairman, that's to receive the recommendation.
Receive the recommendation, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to say that I am delighted that the Maori members of the committee are as collectively making their voice heard It is the importance of hearing these voices, and I think it was commented maybe by you that it is a powerful voice, and it should be a powerful voice. And I'd certainly like to give them support. I don't know what they're saying, but whatever their decision is on that, I am very pleased that they are making their own submission as well as endorsing the council one.
And finally, we stayed away from the Napier-Hastings so-called debate whether Central should be in and Wairoa should be in. That was talked about, but it wasn't considered a priority.
Thank you. I'll put that motion, and all those in favour please say aye. Contrary, no. Thank you, Mr Mohi. Let's break for 10 minutes for morning tea, and when we come back, we'll go back to the agenda as laid out at this stage. Thank you.